The mess hall fell silent as Zara-chun walked through the towering doors of the Galactic Defense Academy. At barely 5 feet tall, she looked like a child among the 7-foot Drakari warriors, the silicon-based crystalline entities, and the graceful, tentacled Aquari cadets. Her simple human physiology seemed laughably primitive compared to her classmates' natural armor, energy manipulation abilities, and advanced sensory organs. Commander Vexthal, a battle-scarred Drakari with scales that gleamed like obsidian, barely glanced at her registration pad. "Another human," he growled, his voice a rumbling bass that made the floor vibrate. "Sector 7 has been sending us their rejects again." The other cadets snickered. Kethran, a young Drakari with golden scales, leaned toward his companions. "Look at those tiny limbs. How does it even plan to hold a plasma rifle?" His comment sparked another wave of laughter that echoed through the crystalline walls. Zara kept her expression neutral, though her jaw tightened slightly. She had heard variations of this conversation for the past 3 years since Earth had joined the Galactic Alliance. Humans were considered the weakest species in known space, no natural weapons, no energy projection, no telepathic abilities. They survived on their home world through technology and luck, according to most galactic citizens. During orientation, Instructor Meltari, a graceful Aquari whose tentacles moved in hypnotic patterns as she spoke, explained the Academy's ranking system. Combat effectiveness is measured across 12 categories: strength, speed, reflexes, tactical analysis, weapons proficiency, energy manipulation, defensive capabilities, sensory awareness, endurance, adaptability, team coordination, and psychological resilience. The holographic display showed the current leaderboard. Drakari cadets dominated the strength and defensive categories. Crystalline entities excelled in energy manipulation and sensory awareness. Aquari cadets led in tactical analysis and team coordination. At the bottom of every category, a small cluster of human names gathered like fallen leaves. "Combat simulations begin tomorrow," Meltari announced. "You will face increasingly difficult scenarios. Only the top 50% will advance to intermediate training." That night, while her roommate, a crystalline entity named Shardek who communicated through harmonic vibrations, meditated by absorbing cosmic radiation, Zara studied the Academy's combat protocols. The simulations were designed to test every species' natural advantages. Drakari scenarios involved direct confrontation and overwhelming force. Crystalline challenges required energy manipulation across multiple spectrums. Aquari tests emphasized fluid movement and group tactics. None were designed for humans. The first simulation threw Zara into a hostile jungle environment against 3 armed opponents. Her Drakari observer, Instructor Braknos, settled back to watch what he assumed would be a quick elimination. The scenario had been running for 30 seconds when he sat up straighter. Instead of charging forward like a Drakari or seeking high ground like an Aquari, Zara had vanished. The simulation's tracking systems showed her moving through the undergrowth in patterns that made no tactical sense. She wasn't heading toward objectives or strategic positions. She seemed to be wandering. Her opponent's 3 advanced combat drones swept through the jungle using standard search algorithms. They moved efficiently, covering maximum ground while maintaining defensive formations. By all tactical analysis, they should have found her within minutes. 47 minutes later, all 3 drones were offline. Braknos pulled up the combat replay, his crest flaring with confusion. Zara had used the environment in ways the simulation's designers never anticipated. She had caused a tree to fall across a ravine, creating a bridge that allowed her to attack from an impossible angle. She had used mud and vegetation to mask her heat signature so completely that even advanced sensors couldn't track her. Most disturbing of all, she had turned the drone's superior technology against them. A carefully placed explosive charge, improvised from their own power cells, had eliminated 2 units simultaneously. The third had been disabled when she somehow convinced it to walk into a concealed pit trap. "Luck," Braknos muttered, uploading the results. Zara's overall score placed her in the bottom third of her class, despite the victory. The simulation weighted her performance based on expected human capabilities, which were historically terrible. The second simulation was space-based combat. Zara piloted a standard fighter against enemy vessels that outgunned her 3-1. Again, she avoided direct confrontation. Instead of engaging in the dogfighting maneuvers that Drakari pilots excelled at, she used asteroid fields and debris patterns to create confusion. She flew through spaces that should have been impossible to navigate, using gravitational slingshots and microjumps that pushed her fighter beyond its supposed limitations. When the simulation ended, she had eliminated 4 enemy vessels without taking a single hit. By the 5th simulation, word had spread. Cadets from other training groups gathered to watch the viewing screens. Instructor Meltari studied Zara's tactical approaches with growing fascination. She doesn't fight like any known species, the Aquari observed to her colleagues. Her patterns are chaotic, but there's an underlying logic we're not seeing. The breakthrough came during the 10th simulation, a complex multi-stage scenario that typically required teams of specialists. Zara was assigned to complete it alone, which most observers considered a cruel joke. The scenario began with intelligence gathering, followed by infiltration, sabotage, and extraction under fire. Each phase was designed to be impossible without specific natural abilities. Intelligence gathering required enhanced senses. Infiltration needed shape-changing or energy manipulation. Sabotage demanded precise physical capabilities. Extraction required raw speed or defensive armor. Zara completed the entire scenario in record time. She had gathered intelligence by reading environmental clues that sophisticated sensors missed, interpreting where patterns on equipment, analyzing chemical residues, even determining enemy numbers by counting sleeping spaces and meal preparations. Her infiltration involved simply walking through the front entrance disguised as a maintenance worker, having observed their shift patterns and uniform requirements. The sabotage was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of using complex energy weapons or brute force, she had introduced a small software virus into their communication system, a concept that hadn't occurred to the simulation's designers because no other species combined technology manipulation with social engineering. Her extraction involved convincing the enemy that their base was under attack by a much larger force, using carefully timed explosions and false communications to create panic. Commander Vexthal watched the replay for the 3rd time, his scales shifting colors with agitation. How is this possible? Dr. Karam, the Academy's chief psychologist, a floating, gaseous being whose thoughts appeared as colored light patterns, pulsed thoughtfully. Perhaps we've been measuring the wrong things. Every species has evolved specific advantages for their environment. Drakari developed strength and armor for direct confrontation. Crystalline entities gained energy manipulation for their high-radiation homeworld. Aquari evolved group intelligence for their complex social ocean environment. And humans? Vexthal asked. Humans evolved on a world where they were the weakest species. Dr. Karam's lights flickered with realization. They survived not through superior physical capabilities, but through adaptability, tool use, and most importantly, deception and social manipulation. They became apex predators not by being stronger than their prey, but by being more unpredictable. The final combat simulation was announced, a free-for-all battle royale involving the top 100 cadets. No rules except survival. Last cadet standing would receive the highest combat rating in Academy history. Zara stood in the preparation chamber, surrounded by beings who could tear her apart with their bare hands, manipulate energy to disintegrate matter, or process battlefield information faster than her neurons could fire. The betting pools gave her odds of 10,000 to 1 against survival past the first minute. When the simulation began, chaos erupted. Drakari charged forward with devastating force. Crystalline entities unleashed energy barrages that lit up the battlefield. Aquari teams moved in perfect coordination, eliminating isolated opponent. With surgical precision, Zara ran away. She sprinted toward the edge of the battlefield while titans clashed behind her. Observers groaned with disappointment. Even the humans watching from Earth seemed resigned to another embarrassing defeat. But Zara wasn't fleeing. She was positioning. While the strongest cadets eliminated each other in spectacular displays of power, she gathered resources. Fallen weapons, damaged equipment, environmental hazards. Everything became part of her growing arsenal. She studied the combat patterns of the remaining fighters, learning their strengths and weaknesses. When only 12 cadets remained, Zara struck. She had turned a section of the battlefield into an elaborate trap network. Explosive charges salvaged from destroyed equipment created choke points and kill zones. Damaged energy weapons became improvised mines. Even the terrain itself became a weapon as she triggered controlled avalanches and structural collapses. One by one, the remaining super soldiers fell to traps they never saw coming, weapons they didn't recognize, and tactics that existed in no military database. When the simulation ended, Zara-chan stood alone in the center of the battlefield, surrounded by the unconscious forms of the galaxy's most elite cadets. The Academy's combat computers spent 17 hours processing her performance. Her final score broke every existing record by a factor of 3. Commander Vexthal found himself staring at results that challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. How do we classify this? Dr. Karam's lights pulsed in what might have been amusement. Perhaps it's time we added a 13th category to our combat effectiveness measurements, which is unpredictability. The next morning, recruitment officers from every major military organization in the galaxy were waiting outside Zara's dormitory. The human who had been a joke just weeks before was now the most sought-after tactical mind in known space. But Zara had already made her choice. She would stay at the academy, not as a student but as an instructor. It was time, she decided, to teach the galaxy how humans really fought. After all, the best predators were the ones nobody saw coming.